Casting across the planet and beyond. First thing I'd like to do is welcome everyone to the call today, and also our special guest, Michael Griffith. Welcome to the call, Michael.
David, great to be here. Thank you.
I'm super excited about today's conversation, which is going to be around the idea of getting referrals in business. And I think that this is probably one of your favourite topics in the world. So I'm going to kick over to you to give us a bit of an intro about who you are and why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, okay, great. We'll give the short story. It's still probably too long, but we'll give the short story. Teacher by trade, elite level basketball coach. That was the before 2009 life, and that's what I thought life would always be. Just could teach because I love coaching, and got to travel the globe coaching sort of semi-elite level sporting teams. Came back after coaching at the University of Hawaii for a couple of years, and just got sick of the lazy teachers and went, hey, you can either put up with this for the next 40 years or you can go do something else. So what does a teacher do? You start a tutoring business, because that's the natural flow from being a teacher into going into business. So sort of fast forward, and over the last 14 years now, we've had 7 businesses, sold 6, but every single business has been through referrals, through networks, through partnerships. Where we sold the big marketing agency in 2013, it was like, we don't even use Google, we don't use SEO, we don't use pay-per-click. We've got to teach people how to actually build their business like we have through referrals and through partnerships. And so since 2013, we've been showing people how to do that. The big breakthrough was probably about 2016, where we just, I can't even remember what I was searching for on YouTube, but it led me down a rabbit hole of about 1,000 videos around, in particular, human behaviour, our primal instincts, why we are hardwired to do certain things, and this notion of the cortex versus the limbic brain. And the cortex brain is very logical, very analytical, very rational. The limbic brain doesn't understand a word you're saying. It is only based on feeling. So we go down that path to really show people, how do you evoke brain chemicals and how do you create these extraordinary moments for your business that make someone feel a particular way. And that doesn't matter whether it's a referral partner, whether it's a client, whether it's a prospect, whether it's a team member. The more you can hone in on these sorts of things, the more someone's actually going to want to help you and do something for you. So it was sort of like the missing piece of the puzzle to why our stuff worked. Now we've actually got the science to why it works.
Okay, so let's get into it. What is the secret to getting more referrals? Because everyone wants them. And I remember a statistic on this, and it was based on the premise that a survey was done of business owners. And they found that 63% of businesses said most of their work comes from word of mouth or referral. And the reason that happens is because you do a good job, right? So then the question was, well, if the majority of your business comes from word of mouth or referral, how do you strategize getting more of those? And 80% of the people surveyed said, we don't have a strategy, we just do a good job. So where I'm going with this is that there's obviously ways to get more referrals, and this is your passion, right? So how do we get people to refer our business more often? What are the key elements?
Yeah, so let's sort of start that there's sort of 3 circles to where referrals can come from. That's pretty much it. The first circle is what we call referral sources. So these are people who sold to the same people you sold to, you don't compete with each other, and therefore you actually want to help each other's businesses grow. The mistake most people make there is they might go and go, David, you work with XYZ, we work with XYZ, let's pass each other referrals. And we go, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then we both sit there and twiddle our thumbs until hopefully one day someone passes us business. So that tends to be the way referral partners are set up, where we go, no, you should be catching up with your referral partner at least once a month, if not every second week, if not weekly, to create action plans on how you can actually give each other more business. And that might be that you share out a guide. It might be introductions to people. It might be promoting something. It might be where you interview each other and share into each other's networks. So there's so many different things that someone could do. We're just going to be more proactive with our referral sources. So that's sort of circle one. Then circle two is our clients. So most people in business tend to just sort of go, well, referrals come from clients and that's it. It's like, no, that's the cherry on top. Very few people actually like asking their clients for referrals. And I get that. It changes the dynamic of the relationship, especially if you're not really good at it. So I sort of just see the client circle as, well, the more you create oxytocin with your clients. So oxytocin as a brain chemical is just this brain chemical that creates bond and creates trust and creates closeness. Anyone you have a great relationship with, whether it be a life partner, a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, mum, dad, it's because the oxytocin that's been created between you. So you can create oxytocin with your clients. That's why they want to refer. It's got nothing to do with doing a good job. You should be doing a good job. That's why they pay you. So when you think about with your clients, think about how do I create deeper bonds with my clients that my clients actually want to talk about me. The third circle is my wider networks. So these days, everyone has networks, whether they be your social platforms, whether you go to networking events, whether it's just who you got in your phone, whether it's who you meet at the barbecue or the lunch or the dinner. And that's the third circle. We've got wider networks. Again, very few people, and whether it's this, we're not very people know what it is we do and who would be great introductions for us. And in the end, I always sort of go, the easiest way to get someone to ask you, is there something I can do to help you? Is you ask the question first. Get out to your networks and start just asking your networks, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? And law of reciprocity, 95% of the time, they're going to ask exactly the same question back to you. Therefore, you're ready to go, in fact, it'd be really good if you could, and then finish the sentence. So there's sort of three key areas to be able to get referrals from. And it's about having a plan for all three rather than just throwing mud at the wall and hoping a referral comes from somewhere. Okay, so we've got our referral sources, we've got our clients, and then we've got our wider networks.
Fantastic. So now we've got three pockets that we can go to ask for referrals. But then you also said something like we should never ask for referrals. We should just be providing dopamine hits or what did you call it? Oxytocin.
Yeah.
We should be getting them excited and visceral about wanting to refer to us. And then you touched on something which was interesting. You said, don't ask for a referral, ask how you can help them, and then rely on the law of reciprocity. Is there any other sort of ideas that come to mind when you talk about giving people oxytocin hits and making sure that the bonds are close? Can you give us maybe some examples of how you've done this for people?
Yeah, certainly. So let's sort of take a step back from there to I suppose, what we love in our limbic advantage. It's how do you limbic the crap out of your business from top to bottom. Because if you can do that, then you strategically influence how other people feel towards you. Now, for most businesses, it's just not even a factor. It's not even something that they can actually comprehend most of the time. Right. So I love, in fact, it was just earlier today, I was on one of my socials and there was a ad from a sponsored ad, a Tony Robbins sponsored ad. And it starts with, you're operating with 2 million year old software, talking about our brain. And we're operating with the same brain that we're given to survive. Stay away from saber-toothed tigers, know how to build a hut, and know how to go and hunt for food. And in today's world, we still have exactly the same survival brain. Yeah. So therefore, it has to be logical. It has to be analytical. It has to be rational because it's been given to you to help you survive. The only problem with that cortex, logical, rational, analytical brain is that it understands exactly what, but it just doesn't understand or it doesn't trigger the emotion, which then triggers human behavior. So most of the time, and this is where I sort of just have a chuckle to myself when people go, well, it's just as simple as doing a good job in asking. Yeah, go do that. Tell me how that works out for you. Like the people who you already had a great relationship with, when you ask them, they were always going to give you a referral anyway. It had nothing to do with asking them.
Yeah.
It had to do with the depth of relationship already in place.
Yeah, gotcha.
Go ask someone that you don't have a good relationship with and see what happens. Like they'll, and you might have heard, and to our listeners, you might have heard where you've asked someone, could they help you with something? And they've gone, yeah, let me have a think about that. Well, that's a polite way to go, you know what?
No.
No. I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay? And in essence, it's hard for someone to be able to help somebody else when they're putting themselves on the line. They're putting their credibility on the line. They're putting their they're putting everything about them on the line.
Yeah.
And the last thing that human beings want is to actually be inconsistent to who they believe they already are.
You're right.
So therefore, it's actually really hard for someone to give you a referral if the depth of relationship is not there. So why do people have better relationships with some people versus other people? I sort of go, well, it's the amount of time you spend with someone, but it's also then the brain chemicals that you evoke when you spend time with that person.
Yeah, gotcha.
So when two people first come together, and that's their first time that they've come together, they're both sort of, there's a bit of a wall up. They're quite cautious. How much do I share? How much do I hold back? How much am I willing to sort of knock down that wall and trust?
Yeah.
And sometimes it might take 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 meetings before someone feels comfortable. I've always sort of said, and it doesn't happen anywhere to the extent that it used to happen in the 90s, but if I go back to the 90s, and in particular the financial sector, and it was like the long lunch on a Friday that would finish up at Saturday 3 a.m. type of thing. Why did that work? It had nothing to do with out having a long lunch. It had everything to do with spending time and creating brain chemicals through the joint experience.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's all it was. And so therefore, it's about how do we create those sorts of times, either with referral partners or with our clients or with our wider networks. Because as we do that, that's when we start creating brain chemicals in other people where they start to go, you know what, David? I don't know what it is, but we just get along with each other. Like I just like you. And that's the limbic brain. It can't.
I think you're frozen on me. You there, Michael? Earth to Michael. Hey, we've lost you. Oh, that's not good. Hopefully we can get you back on the call. We're going to have a unprepared break in our broadcast while we try and work out what happened to Michael. That's not a bad still shot of him though, is it? So I think what he was going to say while we're waiting for him to come back is that your limbic brain, which is a really important part of most people's psychology, is something that we can't control directly. It's controlled indirectly. So this relationship creation side is literally about how do we actually get people to like us? Because I think the first part of any referral relationship is for people to know who you are, they need to like you, and then they need to also trust you. So getting people to like us through building these relationships sounds like a pretty key element. I'm going to see if I can get Michael back on the call. What's happened here? Hey, feel free to get up and take a temporary break while we fix our transmission. Michael is gone. So if you can hang on to your coattails, and we'll wait for him to come to the call. Here he comes. You're back.
Yeah, I was there talking as if it was you that was frozen, and I just kept on talking, assuming that it was your end, not my end.
I'm not sure what just happened there, and I'm not really sure who wasn't talking, but we got to the point where you said the limbic brain doesn't.
Okay, perfect. The limbic brain doesn't understand. It was pretty good suspense, wasn't it, to be able to hold out for
I
that
tried to
2 minutes?
fill in for you. You're going to have to watch a recording to see what I said.
Ah, the limbic brain doesn't understand language.
Yeah.
It only understands feelings.
Right.
So you can say whatever you want to your client, to your referral source, to your wider networks. Doesn't matter. You're speaking to the wrong part of the brain.
Yeah, right.
The only thing the limbic brain understands is feelings. Yet the limbic brain controls all human behavior and all decision making. Like, that's scary to think that when you actually understand how to evoke brain chemicals in your clients, in your referral sources, in your wider networks, you see, getting referrals isn't difficult at all. You've just got to ask yourself, how do you have more fun? How do you deepen the relationship? Because those things then create the brain chemicals, and now just do it more often.
Yeah, right. So let's tune in on this idea, right? Because if we can't talk to the limbic brain directly, what are some examples? So talk to me about a few clients that you've sort of talked through this and how they've actually created more fun, more connection with the limbic brain, so that they've heightened this awareness of this like and trust. Have you got some case studies or some examples of where this has been implemented?
Yeah, because the process brain needs that, and that's our problem. Because the first thing that we need to do is be able to go, I don't need a map to follow. I need to connect better. Pick one person, pick one client that you've got.
Gotcha.
It could be your best client. So you've already probably got a fairly good relationship with that person. But then ask yourself, if I was to create a moment between me and this client that they would go and just go, wow, that was the best time I've ever had, what would you do? So for some people, it might be picking up the phone and speaking to them. For other people, it might be taking them out for lunch or dinner, or sending them some sort of gift, or doing something, remembering something of them. Like, there's such small little things that make people feel a particular way towards you. So many people are just caught up in it being a process.
Yeah, gotcha.
Do we know our client's favorite sporting team? And do we send them a message when they win? Do we send them a fun, bad luck that you just lost by a point, but I'm not really sorry type of message where you're laughing and they're laughing because that's the banter you have back and forth. And we're going to just remember that, like, every single person is just simply a human being.
Yeah, right.
And every single human being is hardwired the same thing. So for us, we create client journey pathways from day zero when someone joins all the way through. On average, our clients stay with us for 3.5 years. So we've got day zero all the way through to day 1600. And we map that out, that every 45 days you're forgotten. So within 0 to 45 days, it's like, okay, what do we have to do? And maybe it's day 20, we're sending a text message and a little reminder will pop up. Send John a text message. Day 55, it might be sending them a handwritten card. On day 70, it might be inviting them out to lunch or something.
Right.
But for every single client, and I think this is where we've gone off the rails, because we try to automate things so much that we lose the human touch. We lose the human element. And when we lose the human element, well, you're talking to the wrong part of the brain.
Well, straight away, as you went through this, two things are going through my mind. The first one is there is a map. So there is a journey that you create. But then the other big issue I think most people have is if I'm not that way inclined, because I know some people are just personable, right? They remember things. And I used to work in a company before I started this business, and the owner of the company had 1,000 employees, and he would remember the last conversation that he had with every single person, which was quite incredible, right? Because it would be, I haven't seen you for a year, and he'd go, David, how are the kids going with so and so? And it's like, wow. Now, that was natural for him, I
Yeah.
think. I think it was, right? Because I'm thinking, I don't know if you could sort of sit down. I'm pretty sure he doesn't write down every note after a conversation. I'm pretty sure it's just he's wired to do that. Okay. And it made him an incredible CEO because every person in the organization felt special.
Yeah.
And people would stayed in that organization where they were getting paid less than market rates because they loved him.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible story because I remember when he sold the company, people just left in droves. And it was sort of like just a consequence of him being such a charismatic leader. But what you described, I see two elements for. One is that you do need some level of mechanism, especially as you scale, so that you don't drop the ball. But it is human, so it has to be a question of how does someone who's not naturally a communicator or personable become more limbic brain driven? What do they need to do?
To me, I think you've got to be around environments that encourage you to think that way. And because I wouldn't have said that I was
Mm.
in the last 3.5 years, the number of videos, the number of conversations, the environments I've put myself in to
Yeah,
force myself to become more like this
yeah,
is why. I don't think anyone naturally is probably like it at the very beginning. I think they can become it if they want to become it, and it's very much around a way of being rather than a way of thinking, and I think that's really important too.
mm.
And it could just start off, and I don't have a great memory. Like we use our CRM for an awful lot of taking notes,
Yeah,
and that's where they have to sit. There are some things that I naturally will remember, and I think the deeper the relationship that you have with someone, the more likely you're going to remember things about that person too, because you actually want to. So, a couple of things on that. I think you've got to start teaching yourself to be this particular way. So maybe it is just simply reaching out to one person a day, starting a conversation, and then following it up in 4, 5, 7 days time. And if you did that every single day, you'd improve that skill set of being able to remember things and follow things up, and it would
yeah,
become habit that that's what you would do. Um, the other thing is, and there was a nice little challenge that I was doing last year, where for 30 days straight, it was do something, go out of your way to do something nice for someone else. And I put some little rules around it that it couldn't just be something simple like buy the person in front of me their coffee, because that's easy for me to do, or pay for someone's petrol when
yeah,
you go and fill up. It had to be something where I had to either feel uncomfortable in doing it or go out of my way that would give up time to do it.
gotcha.
And during that 30-day process, it was things like I'd get a bunch of bones from the butcher and then go up to sort of the vet shelter and drop them off there. And it was time more so.
Mm.
But what it sort of also taught me during that time was there's so many opportunities to make someone else feel good.
Yeah, right.
We just don't take the opportunities anywhere to the extent that we could.
Mm.
And in fact, it was a conversation I had yesterday with my mum, and I was talking to her and saying, "Oh, what did you get up to over the weekend?" And they're sort of like 2.5 hours north of Sydney, so there was a friend of mum's. I didn't know who even the friend was, who's been having a pretty rough time, and they wanted to go down to Canberra, which is like 3.5 hours south of Sydney, so it's about a 6 hour drive from where they are, to visit this flower show. But they couldn't get there. And
Mm.
Mum said to her, "Don't worry, we'll just drive down and pick you up and take you down to Canberra, and we'll spend the night there so you can go to the flower show." And as Mum was telling me the story, I just went, wow,
She's doing it.
like how, yeah, like how, like it doesn't matter about me. It was just about making you feel good. And it's like, if we could just do that on a consistent basis,
Yeah.
you're limiting yourself also. And that's just as important, that you brain chemicalize yourself, because then you want to do this more and more and more and more. So to me, and we come from now, like for most people who are watching this, it's coming from a completely different standpoint in terms of, well, getting referrals. There's some things that should have to happen automatically. You have to be good at what you do,
Yeah.
and you have to get the results that you say you're going to get.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that should be a given. Now, if you do those two things, and then you really focus in on whether it be your referral sources, your clients, or your wider networks, the three
Yeah.
circles, and you focus in on making the people in those three circles feel a particular way,
Yeah.
they're going to want to help you. In fact, they'll start asking, what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
And now just be ready with how you'd like them to help. So to me, it becomes a great way to actually not even have to ask. You have them asking you, what can they actually do to help? And that simply comes from the way you made them feel.
That's the pot of gold at the end of this whole rainbow in this conversation, isn't it? It's really like we have proactive referrals, which is asking, and then we have reactive referrals, which come from this methodology of really just becoming a more likable person. And you know, as you talk through this, all these books go through my head because you talked about the law of reciprocity, which comes from Robert Cialdini's book Influence. It's a law, right? And people are obligated emotionally when you help them to respond. And so it's interesting when you play on a law, you're not actually manipulating because it's just a law, right? The second thing you talked about, which was super interesting, is this whole idea of being interested rather than interesting. And that sort of rung the bell of Dale Carnegie's famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think, like you said, and it sort of rang true for me, is technology has given people a fast track to success, but it's compromised our ability to connect on a human level. And really, it should augment, right? So what you talked about there was using it as a prompt, but you still have to be the human, and you have to build relationships and get people to engage in this emotional connection. It's fascinating because it's probably one of my favorite topics, because I think what you just described here is the easiest marketing strategy on the planet. And I remember when I left that company that I talked about with that CEO, and he sold the business for $320 million. And I remember as he left and I started my coaching business and we were going two paths, and I said, his name was David Shane, and I asked him this question. I said, what, if you were going to give me one tip to success in business, what would it be? And he went to the whiteboard and he drew this circle. And he said, in this circle, you have your customer. You have one customer, and your job is to get that one customer to introduce you to another customer. And he goes, that's it. So what do you mean? He goes, that's it. All you have to do is build a business that people love so much that they send people your way, and you'll never have to market a day in your life.
Yeah, so true. So I want to touch on that because I think most people when they hear that, go, I have to make my product or service so amazing that everyone's going to talk about it.
Uh-huh.
You can have the most amazing product or service, but if you're a douchebag, no one's going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's not only having a great product or service, but it's also how that product and service makes that person feel, plus the owner of the business, how they make that person feel too.
Yeah.
And for most businesses, like we all know the owners of, like we all know the owners of Apple, we all know the owners of Virgin, we all know. So some people, and if you think about the good old Apple Android debate, why do some people love Apple versus some people love Android?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the time, it's got to do with the founders of them and what they stand for,
Exactly.
and what that they're all about. See, we can't lose sight that in the end, having a great product or service is not the only thing that gets people talking. It's about how you and that product and service and that business makes someone feel. And I think a great example, I don't think it matters what country you're listening into, they're exactly the same no matter where you are. Take either a phone organisation, so in Australia here, Vodafone, Optus, Telstra, or take a bank. How many people shout from the rooftops about how amazing their bank is?
Yeah.
Very few.
Yeah.
They provide a product or service.
Yeah.
They do exactly what they're supposed to do, but they don't provide that feeling.
Yeah.
You have frustration. You actually have the fourth brain chemical, cortisol, which is stress.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many times we shoot ourselves in the foot by providing that sort of brain chemical to our wider clientele without even realizing it.
Would you go as far to say that this whole idea of making sure that the emotional connection trumps the quality of the product? If you had to choose between one or the other, you could have a crappier product but have better connection with your clients and beat a company that has a superior product. Yeah, because as you talk through this, I think of companies like Basecamp, and the whole company was based on a minimum viable product. And they said, we sell the philosophy, not the product, and it's minimalistic in terms of what it can do. But we have a philosophy, keep it simple. And so people buy in on this idea of saying we don't need more features. What we need is a company whose philosophy we can align with. And I feel like sometimes people lose that because they get caught in the trap of more features, more features, more features, and more product and more competitive rates. And they actually create the commoditization of their own product because they forget that people buy from people. And we have this debate about B2B and B2C, and it's actually, I've heard it called H2H or P2P, right? And it's just person to person, because when someone says my target market is corporates, I go, who? They go, corporates. I go, who's inside the corporates? They go, Telstra. And you go, well, who inside Telstra? And they go, Telstra. And you go, well, Telstra's never going to write a check or sign it. It's going to be someone. Who is that person? And they stress around it because they realize that they're not actually selling to any person. And what you've just described could not be done unless you were talking to a person. So
100%.
Look, I'm very mindful of time. This is a fascinating topic. We can go for a long time, but what I'm about to do is share, if my system works, your website, which you shared with me, which is the how to get 100 referrals in the next 12 months. So on the screen right now, there is a website called www.100in12.com. Do you want to tell us about what's on there and what people should expect?
So much of it is what we've just been talking about. So the frameworks of really trying to understand it, and sort of within the centerpiece, it's how do you activate extraordinary moments throughout your business?
Yeah.
You don't have a business day. You've got all these moments within your day. Right now, your moment's watching this.
Yeah.
Then you're probably going to have a phone call. You're going to answer an email, or you might have some sort of delivery to do. They're all individual moments. How do you make every moment more extraordinary? Because it's the moments that people remember when you made them feel a particular way. So we then go through the 3 key levers. We then go through how you can actually generate 100 referrals in the next 12 months, which honestly is 8-9 a month, and it's not difficult to do at all.
No. Look, I think for anyone who hasn't tapped into, I know when we started this conversation, I said most people don't have a referral system. Now, to me, a referral system is not a series of tick boxes. A referral system is a proactive approach to creating a referable business. And what you just described is creating these moments and making sure that you choreograph the moments. Because just going back on this, and as you talk, it's sort of, light bulb moments and aha moments for me. But I was working with a photographic studio at one time, and they had 3 different studios running, and one of them in Sydney, of all places, was not getting the same results as everyone else. And they said, we don't know why. These guys are not producing the results. And we looked at it, and they had their KPIs on the board, and they were driven by numbers and all this sort of thing, which was great. But there's a sort of reverse effect that happens when people chase numbers. And the reverse effect is that they chase people away. They become money hungry. And so we went in there and we said, here's the problem. This number is staring at you in the lunchroom every single day, and it's terrifying. So when you see someone, all you see is a prospect. I want you to change this number, and instead of measuring conversion from one step to the next, I want you to measure client happiness in that moment. So at the end of any interaction, whether it's a phone call, an email, or a presentation, I want you to sit back and say, how happy was the client on a scale of 0 to 10? And all of a sudden they started thinking about client experience and their sales followed. So I think there's a lot of merit in what you said, in really just connecting with people, in really just making sure that we're talking about the experience with those people. So it's not just connecting and saying, hey, Michael, how you going? I just thought I'd ring you. It's about getting that visceral connection, giving them a feel-good moment and giving them those chemicals that are actually bonding our relationship. So if you're going to summarize in one statement as we get towards the end of this, because I know it's hard, how would you summarize the message from today for people on the call?
Be interested about other people more than you're interested in yourself.
Yeah.
I think if you had that, you would then generally create conversations with people because you actually wanted to create conversations with people. Yeah. You'd do things differently and you'd find better ways to enhance the experience someone has with you.
Yeah.
Because that experience actually mattered to you.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds so commonsensical, but also counterintuitive at the same time, right? So it's a paradox there for people.
Yeah, and it's sort of how we start. It is the complete opposite to the survival brain you were given, which is why so many people find this so difficult. Where you're right, you listen to it, and it's like, duh, like that. Everyone should be able to do that.
Yeah.
But the problem is, on the other side, you've got this brain which actually forces you to do the complete opposite because it's purely there to help you survive.
Yeah. So that comes back to fight and flight.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, awesome. Michael, I could sit here and talk to you about this for hours, and I know most people would love to listen because it's one of the secret sources of business is creating connections. And I think for a lot of people in business, when we come down to what's their purpose, it's to help other people. So if they can tap into this, they can jump on the website, they can do the research, they can find you online, they can find me online. Taking this on board as one of your tenets of business is not just about getting more business. It's about connecting with more people. So awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your insight today. It's been amazing.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us.
All right. Thanks.